the morning sun on Kepler-4, for it to be cast long purple shadows across the mining camp. Kim Tae-ho wiped sweat from his forehead as he checked his equipment one more time. The air felt thick today, almost electric. Something was different. Tae-ho-kum, look at this, called Park So-young from her workstation near the main drilling site. Her voice carried worry that made him look up from his specimen containers. Tae-ho walked over to where the engineer stood, pointing at her scanner. The screen showed movement patterns underground. Big movements. Very big. How large do you think it is? So-young asked. Before Tae-ho could answer, the ground began to shake. Not the gentle rumble of the mining equipment, but something else. Something alive. Commander Sektar of the Vorthok mining crew hissed loudly. His reptilian features twisted with fear as he backed away from the drill site. The other alien workers followed their commander, their scaled hands reaching for weapons. "What is happening?" shouted Lee Dong-woo, the human security chief, as he ran toward them. The shaking grew stronger. Small rocks bounced on the ground like dancing pebbles. Then the drilling equipment stopped working. The sudden silence felt heavy and dangerous. Tae-ho knelt down and pressed his ear to the ground. The vibrations told him a story. Something massive was moving beneath them. Something that had been sleeping deep underground until the drilling woke it up. "Everyone needs to step back," he said calmly. "Something is coming up." The Vorthok soldiers raised their plasma rifles. Their commander Sektar clicked his claws against his weapon. "Prepare for defensive positions," he ordered his troops. But Tae-ho shook his head. "No weapons. That will only make it angry." Angry Sektar's yellow eyes went wide. "Human, you do not understand the dangers of this world. The beasts here are not like anything in your galaxy sector." A crack appeared in the ground near the main drill. Then another crack, and another. The cracks spread out like a web, growing wider with each passing second. So-young grabbed her emergency kit. "Should we call for evacuation?" "Not yet," Tae-ho said. He studied the crack patterns. "Let me see what we are dealing with first." Dong-woo moved closer to Tae-ho. "What are you thinking?" "I am thinking that this creature lived here long before. We came, we disturbed its home. Maybe it just wants us to stop." The Vorthok commander made a sound that was part laugh and part fear. "Stop. These beasts do not negotiate human, they only destroy." The ground exploded upward in a shower of dirt and rocks. From the hole came something that made even the brave human miners step backward. It was huge, covered in dark fur that seemed to absorb light. Spines made of crystal ran along its back, catching the purple sunlight and throwing it back in sharp flashes. The creature's head was like a wolf, but bigger than any earth animal. Its teeth were white as snow and longer. Then a human arm. When it breathed, steam rose from its nostrils. Its eyes glowed blue like stars. "Shadowmaw," whispered one of the Vorthok soldiers. "The legends are true." The beast looked around the mining site. Its glowing eyes studied each person and alien. When those eyes found the Vorthok, the creature's lips pulled back to show more of those terrible teeth. Sektar raised his rifle. "All units, prepare to fire." "Wait," Tae-ho said. But the Shadowmaw had already seen the weapons. It let out a roar that shook the buildings and made everyone's ears ring. The sound was like thunder mixed with the cry of a hunting predator. The creature stepped toward the Vorthok soldiers. Each step left deep prints in the hard ground. Its crystal spines began to glow brighter. "Tame that beast," Sektar shouted as his soldiers aimed their weapons. "Human, do something before it kills us all." But instead of running away or reaching for a weapon, Tae-ho walked toward the Shadowmaw. "Tae-ho, no," So-young called out. Dong-woo started to follow, but Tae-ho held up his hand. "Stay back, all of you." The Shadowmaw turned its massive head toward the approaching human. Those blue eyes focused on Tae-ho like twin spotlights. The creature's breathing grew faster. Tae-ho kept walking. His steps were slow and steady. He did not run. He did not reach for weapons. He just walked forward with his hands visible at his sides. "He has lost his mind," one of the Vorthok whispered. "The human is walking to his death," another said, but Tae-ho did not feel afraid. Something in his mind told him that this creature was not evil. It was just scared and angry. The drilling had hurt its ears. The bright lights had hurt its eyes. All it wanted was for the pain to stop. The Shadowmaw lowered its head as Tae-ho came closer. The creature's nose was bigger than the human's entire body. Steam from its breathing made the air warm around Tae-ho. Everyone watched in complete silence. Even the wind seemed to stop blowing. Taeho raised one hand slowly, very slowly. The Shadow Maw's eyes followed the movement, its ears, large and pointed, like a wolf's, turned toward the human. "Easy," Taeho said in a soft voice. "I am not here to hurt you." The creature's massive head tilted to one side, like a dog trying to understand a new sound. Taeho took another step closer. Now he was close, enough to touch the beast's nose. The Shadow Maw could bite him in half with one snap of its jaws, but it did not move. "I know we woke you up," Taeho continued in that same gentle voice. "I know the noise hurt you. We did not mean to cause pain." The Shadow Maw's breathing began to slow down. The glow from its crystal spines grew dimmer. Behind Taeho, the Vorthok soldiers stood frozen. Their weapons were still raised, but their hands shook. They had never seen anything like this. So Dash Young held her breath. Dongwoo's hand was on his sidearm, ready to help if needed. Tae-Ho reached out and placed his palm against the creature's nose. The fur was softer than he expected, warm. The Shadow Maw's eyes closed for a moment, like it was enjoying the gentle touch there. Taeho said, "You are not a monster. You are just scared." The Shadow Maw made a sound, but not a roar. It was almost like a purr, deep and rumbling. The creature lowered itself until it was lying on the ground, making itself smaller and less threatening. Taeho smiled and patted the beast's nose again. "Good, much better." Commander Sektar slowly lowered his weapon. His yellow eyes stared. In disbelief. "How?" he whispered. "How is this possible?" The other humans began to move closer, but carefully. They had watched their friend do the impossible. He had tamed a creature that was supposed to be untamable. Taeho Soyoung said, softly, "How did you know it would not hurt you?" Taeho looked back at his friends, his hand still resting on the Shadow Maw's nose. "I do not know. I just felt that it was more afraid than angry." The Shadow Maw opened its eyes and looked at the other humans. There was no anger in that gaze now, only curiosity, and in that moment, everything changed for the mining colony on Kepler-4 for 2B. 3 days had passed since Taeho first touched the Shadow Maw. The creature, which the humans now called Onyx because of its dark fur, had not left the mining camp. It lay near the main buildings during the day and walked the perimeter at night. Like a guard dog, Dr. Choi Minna arrived on the morning transport from the orbital station. She carried more equipment than seemed possible for one person. Her excitement was clear from the moment she stepped off the shuttle. "Where is he?" she asked Soyoung before even saying hello. "Where is the man who tamed the Shadow Maw?" Soyoung pointed toward the research area where Taeho was collecting soil samples. Onyx lay nearby, watching him work with those bright blue eyes. "Incredible," Mina whispered. She pulled out her scanner and began taking readings. The creature's stress hormones are completely normal. No signs of fear or aggression. Taeho looked up from his work. "Dr. Choi, I did not expect you so soon. Are you joking?" Mina laughed. "When the reports reached Earth about a human taming a Shadow Maw, every scientist in the system wanted to come here. I was lucky to get the first transport." She moved closer to Onyx. But carefully, the creature's ears turned toward her, but it did not seem worried. Mina held up her scanner and began recording data. "Amazing. Your pheromone levels are completely different from baseline human readings," she told Taeho, "and the creature is responding to something we cannot even detect." "What do you mean?" Taeho asked. "Humans produce chemical signals that other species can smell, even if we cannot. But your signals, when you are near Onyx, are unlike anything I have seen before." Across the camp, Yoon Jamin was having a very different conversation with the Vorthok administrator, Grixmel. The alien's scales were a dull brown color, which meant he was stressed. "The consortium demands answers," Grixmel said in his mechanical voice. "How can humans control these beasts? What technology are you hiding from us?" Jamin shook his head. "We are not hiding anything. We do not understand it either. Impossible. Nothing on this world can be tamed. Our scientists have studied Kepler-4 for 2B for 50 cycles. Every creature here attacks any intelligent species on sight, except humans, apparently," Jamin said. Grixmal's scales turned darker. "This changes everything. The consortium will need to review all agreements with Earth." Before Jamin could respond, alarms began ringing throughout the camp. Dongwu's voice came over the communication system. All personnel to safe positions. We have multiple large contacts approaching from the northern ridge. Through the camp ran humans and Vorthok alike. But while the aliens headed for the bunkers, most humans went to the observation posts to see what was coming. Taeho stood up from his work. Onyx also rose, its crystal spines beginning to glow softly. The creature's nose lifted to smell the air. "What is it, Onyx?" Taeho asked. The Shadow Maw made a low sound, not quite a growl, but not friendly either. It was looking toward the northern hills where large shapes were moving against the purple sky. "Prismatic ravens," So-Young said as she joined Taeho, "at least a dozen of them." The ravens were as large as Earth helicopters, with wings that caught light and threw it back in rainbow colors. Their beaks were sharp enough to cut through metal, and their claws could grab a full-grown Vorthok and carry it away. "Why are they coming here?" Mina asked, still recording everything with her equipment. "They hunt in packs," Dongwu said over the radio. "Something must have attracted them." The first raven landed on the camp's outer fence. The metal posts bent under its weight. More ravens circled overhead, their wings making sounds like breaking glass. Commander Sektar's voice crackled over the emergency channel. "All Vorthok forces to defensive positions. Prepare plasma cannons for aerial targets." But Taeho was walking toward the fence where the first raven had landed. "Taeho, stop!" So-Young called. The raven's head turned toward the approaching human. Its eyes were like black mirrors, reflecting everything around them. The creature's beak opened to show a purple tongue. Onyx followed Taeho, but stayed several steps behind. The Shadow Maw's spines glowed brighter, ready to protect its human friend if needed. "Easy," Taeho said to the raven, in the same gentle voice he had used with Onyx. "We are not here to hurt you." The raven tilted its head, much like Onyx had done days before, its rainbow wings folded against its body. From the observation post, Mina watched her scanner with growing excitement. "The same pheromone changes," she said to herself. "It is happening again." Taeho reached out slowly toward the raven. The creature's beak was close enough to take off his arm, but it did not strike. Instead, it leaned forward until its head touched the human's palm. "Impossible," breathed Grixmal, who was watching from a safe distance. The other ravens began landing around the camp. None of them attacked. They simply perched on buildings and equipment, watching the humans with curious eyes. Han Sujin arrived. That afternoon, on the emergency transport, she was Earth's best animal behaviorist, and she brought more questions than answers. "In all my years studying animal psychology, I have never seen anything like this," she told the gathered research team. "These creatures should be attacking you. Every instinct they have should tell them to see humans as threats. But they do not," Taeho said. "They seem almost friendly." "That is what worries me," Sujin replied. "What if this is not natural? What if something on this planet is changing how these creatures think?" Mina looked up from her data. "I have been analyzing the blood samples we took from Taeho. His brain chemistry shows unusual activity in the areas that control empathy and emotional reading." Meaning, Jamin asked, meaning he might be able to sense what the creatures are feeling, and they might be able to sense that he means no harm. Night fell over the camp with ravens perched on every available surface, and Onyx lying near the human quarters. The Vorthok had sealed themselves in their section of the base. Afraid to come out while so many predators were nearby, Taeho sat outside his quarters, watching the stars through Kepler-4 for 2b's thin atmosphere. Onyx's great head rested near his feet, and several ravens had moved closer to listen to his quiet voice. "What makes us different?" he wondered aloud. So-Young joined him, carefully sitting where the creatures could see her clearly. "Maybe we are not different. Maybe we are just the first species to try talking instead of shooting." "The Vorthok are not wrong to be afraid," Taeho said. "These creatures are dangerous, but they are also intelligent. They understand more than we give them credit for." A new sound reached them from the hills. Something large was moving underground. Getting closer to the camp, Onyx lifted its head and made a warning sound. "What now?" So-Young asked. Before Taeho could answer, the ground near the camp entrance began to crack. Something else was about to surface. "Stone serpents," Mina said. Checking her species identification guide, they tunnel through rock like it is soft dirt. The first serpent emerged near the main gate. It was as thick as a tree trunk and covered in scales that looked like carved stone. Its head was eyeless, but it had organs that could sense heat and vibration from far away. More serpents followed. Soon there were dozens of them, their bodies creating new tunnels and paths around the camp. But like the ravens and onyx, they did not attack. They simply explored the area around the humans, touching equipment with careful movements of their heads. "This is not random," Sujin said as she watched the serpents move. "They are drawn here by something specific, something about you, humans." Grixmel's voice came over the communication system, full of fear and confusion. "What are you humans doing to our world? Why do all the beasts come to you?" Teho looked around at the creatures that now surrounded their camp: ravens, serpents, and one massive Shadowmaw, all living peacefully near the humans while the Vorthok hid in their sealed bunkers. "We are not doing anything," he said into his communicator. "We are just being ourselves." But deep down, Teho knew that something important was happening, something that would change how humans fit into the galaxy forever. The silver ship appeared in Kepler-4, for a 2B's sky like a falling star. It was beautiful and strange, made of materials that seemed to glow with their own light. When it landed near the mining camp, everyone knew their quiet days were over. "Ambassador?" Velthari stepped out of the ship with movements that looked like dancing. The Lumina were tall and thin, with skin that changed colors like an oil rainbow. They claimed to be the oldest species in the galaxy, wise beyond all others. "Greetings, humans of Earth," Velthari said, in a voice like wind chimes. "The Galactic Council has sent me to observe this unusual situation." Teho walked forward to meet the ambassador. Behind him, Onyx followed closely. The Shadowmaw had grown protective of the human and rarely left his side. Velthari's skin shifted to bright yellow when they saw Onyx. "Fascinating. The creature shows no aggression toward me, yet I sense its readiness to defend you." "Onyx is my friend," Teho said simply. "Friends protect each other." "Friend?" Velthari's colors shifted again, this time to deep blue. "We Lumina have studied consciousness for 10,000 years. We understand all forms of intelligent thought. Yet this creature's mind is different from what we expected." Around the camp, more creatures had arrived during the night. Small, flying things that looked like jeweled butterflies filled the air. A young intern who had arrived with Dr. Choi's research team was having her own strange experience. She had been working late in the supply shed when she noticed the air getting colder. "Hello," she called softly. "Is someone there?" Then she saw them shapes moving in the shadows that were not quite there. Void stalkers, the invisible predators that hunted by body heat. So Ra should have run. Every safety protocol said to get away from void stalkers as fast as possible. But she found herself standing still, watching the shifting shadows with curiosity instead of fear. "You are beautiful," she whispered. The shadows stopped moving. The cold air grew warmer. Then, slowly, one of the creatures became visible. Looked like a large cat made of starlight, with eyes like tiny galaxies. Sora reached out her hand. The void stalker moved closer and touched her palm with its nose. The creature's fur felt like cool silk. "Amazing," she breathed, "by morning." Void stalkers were following Sora around the camp. They stayed mostly invisible, but sometimes their outlines could be seen near her. When Commander Sektar saw this, his scales turned almost white with fear. "This is too much," he told anyone who would listen. First the Shadowmaw, then the ravens and serpents, now the void stalkers. The humans are controlling everything on this world. Captain Bei Hyansu arrived that afternoon with a full military escort. The Earth defense ship New Sol was massive compared to the research vessels already in orbit. Its arrival sent a clear message to everyone watching. Captain Jamin greeted him at the landing pad. "We were not expecting military support. Earth Command is concerned," Hyansu replied. His uniform was crisp and his manner was all business. "Reports of humans controlling alien creatures have reached the highest levels. We need to understand what is happening here." The captain's arrival made the Vorthok even more nervous. War leader Kenth, who commanded the alien fleet in orbit, sent angry messages to the surface. "The humans bring warships." Kenth's transmission crackled over the radio. "They plan to use their beast control as a weapon against us." "That is not true," Jamin tried to explain during the emergency meeting. Our people are not controlling anything. The creatures choose to be near us. Velthari watched the discussion with interest. Their skin colors kept changing as they processed new information. War Leader Kenth, your fear is understandable, but perhaps unnecessary. Easy words from someone whose ship can escape if needed, Kenth replied. We Vorthok have mining operations across this sector. If humans can turn every world's creatures against us, what happens to our people? Captain Hyansu leaned forward. Korea and Earth have no intention of using local wildlife as weapons. We are explorers, not conquerors. Then explain the Void Stalkers, Sektar said, pointing toward Sora, who was sitting quietly with nearly invisible shapes around her. Those creatures have killed dozens of our workers over the years. Now they follow a human, childlike pets. Sora looked up from her datapad. They are not pets, they are just lonely. They have been trying to communicate with other species for years, but everyone runs away, because they are predators, Sektar insisted. Because you are afraid, Sora replied calmly. Fear makes people do dangerous things. The Void Stalkers sense your fear and think you want to fight them. Velth colors shifted to bright silver. The young human speaks wisdom beyond her years. Fear creates the very danger we seek to avoid. But War Leader Kenth was not convinced. His ship moved to a position where its weapons could target the mining camp. I give you 1 solar day to remove the creatures from this area. If they remain, we will consider this a hostile act. Captain Hyansu stood up. That sounds like a threat, War Leader. It is a fact, Kenth replied. The Vorthok Consortium will not allow humans to weaponize the creatures of this world. The meeting ended badly. The Vorthok sealed themselves in their section of the base and prepared for possible evacuation. The humans continued their daily work, but everyone could feel the tension growing that evening. Teho sat with Onyx and several ravens on the hill overlooking the camp. The Void Stalkers were barely visible shapes near Sora, who was reading to them from her datapad. Stone serpents moved peacefully through the area, their tunnel systems now connecting different parts of the settlement. Dr. Choi approached with her latest test results. The scans show something interesting, she told Teho. Your brain activity spikes when you are near the creatures, but not in the areas that control fear or aggression. What areas, then? Teho asked. Empathy, understanding, social bonding. The same areas that activate when humans interact with beloved pets or close friends. So we see them as friends, not threats. Exactly. And somehow, they understand this. They recognize that you mean no harm. Velthari joined them on the hill, their skin glowing softly in the evening light. I have been studying your interactions for 3 days, the ambassador said. What I see challenges everything we Lumina thought we knew about consciousness. How so? Mina asked. We believed that intelligence creates barriers between species. The more evolved a mind becomes, the less it can connect with primitive creatures. Yet you humans, with your advanced technology and complex society, bond easily with beings you cannot even speak to. A new sound reached them from the forest. Something very large was moving through the trees, breaking branches and shaking the ground with each step. Onyx stood up and made a warning sound. The ravens took flight, circling overhead. The Void Stalkers became completely invisible. What is that? Sora asked. Through the trees came something that made even Teho step backward. It was enormous, covered in thick armor plates with multiple heads that moved independently. A Titan worm, the largest predator on Kepler-44b. The creature stopped at the edge of the forest and looked toward the camp. Its multiple eyes studied the humans and their animal companions. Nobody move, Captain Hyansu ordered over the radio. All units, prepare for evacuation. But the Titan worm did not attack. Instead, it made a sound like distant thunder and slowly turned away, disappearing back into the forest. It was just curious, Teho said quietly. It wanted to see what was happening here. Velthari's skin turned bright white. They have no curiosity, only hunger. Maybe they do have curiosity, Sora suggested. Maybe everyone has been too afraid to notice. High above, War Leader Kenth watched the Titan worm through his ship's sensors. The largest predator on the planet had approached the human camp and left without violence. This changed everything. Prepare the fleet for immediate departure. He ordered his crew. The humans are more dangerous than we thought. As the Vorthok ships began moving away from Kepler-44 to Teho, looked up at the stars, and wondered what would happen next. The creatures around him seemed peaceful, but he could feel that bigger changes were coming. The galaxy was watching now, and not everyone was happy with what they saw. The discovery happened by accident. Teho was sitting with Onyx near the communications array when he suddenly felt dizzy. The world around him seemed to shift, and for a moment he could sense something that was not his own thoughts. Hunger, loneliness, the need for companionship. These feelings were not coming from his own mind. They were coming from Onyx. Dr. Lim Teho called to the neurologist, who had arrived with the latest research team. "I need you to run some tests on me, Dr." Lim Woo-jin was a quiet man who spent most of his time studying brain patterns. He had been fascinated by the reports from Kepler-44 to BN, had requested assignment to the colony specifically to study the human-creature bonds. "What kind of tests?" Woo-jin asked. "I think I can feel what Onyx is feeling," Teho said. "Not just guess at it. Actually feel it." Woo-jin's eyes widened. That would be impossible. Cross-species empathy requires similar brain structures. "Test me," Teho insisted. They set up the equipment that afternoon. Electrodes attached to Teho's head would measure his brain activity while he interacted with Onyx. Other sensors would monitor the Shadow Maw's biological responses. "Think of something that makes you happy," Woo-jin instructed Onyx. Then realized how silly that sounded. But Teho placed his hand on Onyx's head and thought happy thoughts. Memories of Earth, of family, of the first time he saw the stars. The readings were incredible. Both human and creature showed matching brainwave patterns in areas that controlled emotion and social bonding. "This should not be possible," Woo-jin whispered as he studied the data. "Your brain is producing neural patterns that match an alien species. It is like you are both thinking the same thoughts." Word of the discovery spread quickly through the camp. Soon, other humans were volunteering. For similar tests, Sora's connection with the Void Stalkers showed the same matching patterns. Even So Young, who had been working closely with the Stone Serpents, displayed signs of emotional bonding. But the bigger test was coming. Seismic sensors had been tracking something massive moving beneath the planet's surface for days. The readings showed a creature so large that it registered like an earthquake when it moved. "Titan Verm," Kim Ha-young said as she studied the geological data, "and it is heading straight for us." The young geologists had been mapping the underground systems since arriving on Kepler-44 to be her work. Showed that the planet had vast tunnel networks created by creatures over thousands of years. "How big?" Captain Hyen-soo asked. "Bigger than our largest ships," Ha-young replied. "The seismic readings suggest it is over 2 kilometers long." Sergeant Oh Min-ho immediately began evacuation procedures. "All non-essential personnel to the emergency shuttles. We have 6 hours before the creature reaches this area." But Teho was not ready to give up. "What if we can communicate with it like we did with the others?" "This is different," Chief Engineer Kang Ji-hoon said as he worked frantically on the communication equipment. "The smaller creatures we could approach safely. This thing could destroy the entire camp just by surfacing. Then we need to reach it before it gets here," Teho said. Dr. Shin Da-jin, the xenopsychologist, looked up from her research. "The theory is sound. If human brain patterns can synchronize with local fauna, we might be able to broadcast calming signals." Ji-hoon nodded. "I can modify the communication array to transmit human brainwave patterns, but someone would need to be connected to the system, and we do not know what that might do to a human mind." "I will do it," Teho said immediately. "Absolutely not," Captain Hyen-soo ordered. "The risk is too great." But Park Seo-gen, the colony's psychologist, had been monitoring Teho's mental state since the first encounter with Onyx. His psychological profile shows remarkable stability. If anyone can handle the stress of such an experiment, it would be him. The debate continued as the Titan Vyram moved closer. Underground sensors showed it was now less than 4 hours away. "And moving faster. We are running out of time," Ha-young announced. "At its current speed, it will reach the camp in 3 hours." Ambassador Velthari had been quietly observing the humans' preparations. Now they spoke up. "The Lumina have ancient records of creatures like this Titan Varm. They are not evil, merely ancient and powerful. Perhaps your approach has merit." "What do the records say?" Shin asked. "They say that Titan worms are drawn to strong emotions. Anger, fear, and hatred attract them. But they also speak of rare individuals who could calm the great beasts with pure thoughts. War Leader Kent's voice crackled over the emergency channel. Humans, our sensors show the creature approaching your position. We are prepared to provide orbital bombardment support. No, Teho said firmly. Violence will only make it angry. We need to try the peaceful approach first. Captain Hyansu looked around at his people. The evacuation was proceeding, but slowly. If the Titan Vorm arrived early, many humans would still be in danger. Do it, he decided. But at the first sign of danger, we abort and fall back to orbital evacuation. Ji-hoon finished his modifications to the communication array just as the first tremors reached the surface. The Titan Virharm was close now, maybe an hour away. Teho sat in the chair, surrounded by monitoring equipment. The electrodes connected his brain to the powerful transmitter that Ji-hoon had built. Remember, Woojin said as he checked the medical monitors, think peaceful thoughts, calm, safe, welcoming feelings. Onyx lay down beside the chair. The Shadow Moss seemed to understand that something important was happening. The other creatures around the camp had also grown quiet, as if they were waiting for something. Beginning transmission. Ji-hoon announced. Tai-ho felt this strange sensation of his thoughts being amplified and broadcast into the ground. Through the neural link, his peaceful intentions spread downward through rock and soil toward the approaching giant dot. At first, nothing seemed to change. The tremors continued growing stronger. Equipment rattled on the tables. Small rocks fell from the ceiling of the temporary structures. Then, gradually, the shaking began to slow down. It is working, Hyung said, watching her seismic readings. The creature is slowing down. The tremors stopped completely. For long minutes, there was total silence, except for the hum of the communication equipment. Where is it? Minho asked. The answer came when the ground split open 2 kilometers away from the camp. What emerged was beyond anything they had imagined. The Titan Virharm was like a living mountain, covered in rock-like armor that had grown over centuries. Its head was larger than the entire mining facility. Multiple eyes, each the size of a building, focused on the small camp where the humans waited. Maintain the connection, Ji-hoon said quietly. Do not let fear into your thoughts. Teho concentrated on feelings of friendship and safety. Through the neural link, he tried to project the same emotions he felt when Onyx first approached him. The Titan Virharm's massive head tilted, studying the humans with ancient intelligence. Then, incredibly, it began to move toward them. Everyone, stay calm, Captain Hyansu ordered. No sudden movements. The giant creature stopped just outside the camp perimeter. One enormous eye lowered until it was level with the humans. Through that, I add intelligence older than civilization, studied these strange new beings, who spoke in thoughts of peace. Teho felt a response through the neural link. Not words, but images and emotions. The loneliness of centuries spent underground, the pain of surface dwellers who always ran or attacked, the confusion about these small creatures who offered friendship instead of fear. It understands, Teho whispered. It knows we mean no harm. The Titan Vorm made a sound like distant thunder, but softer, almost gentle. Then it settled down near the camp, its massive body creating new hills in the landscape. Through his neural connection, Teho felt something he had never expected from such a creature. Incredible, Valthari said, their skin shifting through every color of the spectrum. In all our ancient records, nothing like this has ever been documented. Captain Hyansu slowly lowered his weapon. Stand down, all defensive positions. Think we just made the biggest friend in the galaxy. As evening fell over Kepler-4 for Tnemies, the humans found themselves protected by creatures that had once been feared throughout the sector. The Titan Virharm dozed peacefully near their camp, while ravens roosted on its armored back and stone. Serpents explored the new tunnels it had created. Teho disconnected from the communication array, exhausted but amazed by what they had accomplished. Do we call it? Sora asked, looking up at the massive creature. Mountain? Teho said without hesitation. We call it Mountain. The morning after Mountain's arrival changed everything at the mining camp. The massive Titan Virharm had settled into the landscape like a living mountain range, its presence both protective and awe-inspiring. Taho woke up feeling different. The neural connection from the previous day had left him with a strange awareness. He could sense the emotions of all the creatures around the camp, like background music in his mind. Connected, Teho replied. Mountain's giant eye opened as Teho approached. Through their bond, the humans sensed curiosity mixed with ancient loneliness. "Good morning, Mountain," Teho said softly. The creature's response rumbled through the ground, a sound felt rather than heard. Contentment and gratitude flowed through their connection. Chief Engineer Kong Ji-hoon was already at work, studying the readings from yesterday's neural broadcast. The energy output was incredible, he told the gathered research team. We were transmitting human brain patterns at levels that should have been impossible. Could we do it again? Captain Hyun-soo asked. Perhaps, but the risk to Teho would be enormous. The interesting part is that the effect seems to be permanent. Teho's brain patterns have changed. He is maintaining low-level connections with multiple creatures simultaneously. Ambassador Velthari approached the group, their skin cycling. Through thoughtful blue and silver tones, this development troubles the Galactic Council. Your ability to bond with alien consciousness is unlike anything we have. Observed, the Lumina have spent millennia trying to understand other forms of intelligence. Yet you humans accomplish in days what we have failed to do in centuries. War Leader Kent's transmission interrupted their discussion. Attention, human settlement. Vorthok fleet sensors detect massive creatures moving toward your position from multiple directions. Captain Hyun-soo activated the camp's long-range scanners. The readings confirmed Kent's warning. At least 6 large lifeforms were approaching from different directions. They are just ... coming here. Through the neural link, Teho felt Mountain's awareness of the approaching creatures. The Titan Varm was not alarmed. Mountain is calling them, Teho realized. It is lonely and wants company. Company. Sergeant Oh Min-ho checked his weapons nervously. What kind of company? The first newcomer arrived that afternoon. Another Titan Verm, slightly smaller, then Mountain, but still enormous. 2 of them breathed Sora as she watched from the observation post. But the second creature was not alone. Riding on its back were dozens of smaller creatures that looked like furry lizards with 6 legs. They jumped down and began exploring the camp area, chattering to each other in high-pitched voices. Forest dancers identified Han Soo-jin from her species database. They are supposed to be extremely aggressive to any species larger than themselves, but the forest dancers showed no aggression toward the humans. Instead, they seemed curious, species simultaneously. Is he in danger? Captain Hyun-soo asked. Unknown. This is completely outside any medical experience we have. On its back was a structure that looked like a primitive city, with small buildings and bridges connecting different areas. There are people living up there, So-young said through her binoculars, small humanoid figures. The Kethvelthari said with surprise, "We thought they were extinct." They were the original inhabitants of this world before they disappeared centuries ago. The small figures climbed down from their mobile city and approached the human camp, color like chameleons. Their leader, an elderly Keth with silver markings, walked directly to Teho. "Was not calling anyone," Teho said. "But you were." The Keth elder smiled. "When you opened your mind to Mountain, you opened it to all of us." For the first time in centuries, someone spoke the old language of peace. More creatures continued arriving throughout the day. Flying things that looked like jellyfish floated in from the upper atmosphere. Each group brought their own unique forms of intelligence and consciousness. Teho found himself serving as a translator between species that had never been able to communicate before. Emotions then helped them understand each other. Multiple species forming cooperative relationships through human mediation. But the strain was beginning to show on Teho. His hands shook, and he had trouble focusing on conversations. "I am fine," Teho insisted, but everyone could see he was struggling. The situation became critical when the largest group yet appeared on the horizon. A herd of creatures that walked on 2 legs like giant birds, but with arms like humans and faces that showed clear intelligence. Skywalkers, the Keth Elder, identified them. They have not been seen near the surface for many generations. The Skywalkers approached cautiously, led by an individual with golden feathers and bright blue eyes. When it saw Teho, it made a complex series of sounds that seemed almost like singing. Through the neural link, Teho felt the Skywalker's message. It was not just words, but images and emotions that told a story spanning thousands of years. "They remember," Teho said. "Weekly, they remember when all the species of this world lived together in peace, before fear and misunderstanding drove them apart. The Skywalker leader approached and gently touched Teho's forehead with a feathered hand. The contact sent new information flowing through the neural network. They want to help Teho, translated, they know techniques for managing multiple consciousness connections. They learned them in the old days when the Keth still lived on the surface. Working together, the Skywalker and the Keth Elder helped Teho learn to control the neural links. Instead of being overwhelmed by every creature's emotions, he learned to focus on specific connections when needed. Better, Dr. Lim asked, as Teho's vital signs stabilized. Much better. Enemies for centuries were sharing space peacefully. The Titan worms formed a protective circle around the smaller species, while the Skywalkers and Kith worked together to set up temporary shelters. Ambassador, your species has accomplished something that contradicts every theory of interspecies relations. We did not create anything, the captain replied. We just stopped being afraid long enough to listen. War Leader Kent's final transmission of the day carried a different tone than his earlier messages. Human Captain Vorthok, sensors show your position is now defended by creatures with combined firepower exceeding most military fleets. We, withdraw our objections to your presence on this world. That night, Teho sat surrounded by representatives of a dozen different species. Through the neural links, he could feel their shared sense of wonder at what they had built together. But he could also sense something else on the edge of his awareness. Other ships were approaching Kepler-4 for to be drawn by reports of what was happening at the mining camp. The galaxy was taking notice, and not everyone who was coming would have peaceful intentions. 6 months had passed since Mountain first emerged from the deep places of Kepler-4 for to be. The small mining camp had grown into something unprecedented in galactic history, a thriving multi-species settlement where former enemies lived and worked. Together, Teho stood on the observation platform that the Skywalkers had built high on Mountain's back. From here, he could see the entire community spread out below. Keth cities dotted the landscape, connected by roads that the stone serpents had carved through solid rock. Forest dancers played in gardens tended by human botanists and engineers who had decided to stay and study this new way of living. The Council fleet is requesting permission to land, announced Lee Ariam, one of the new trainees, who had arrived to learn the techniques of creature communication. All of them? Teho asked. 17 ships representing 12 different species, Ariam confirmed. Ambassador Velthari says the entire Galactic Council wants to observe our methods. Director Kim Young-soo, who had been appointed to oversee the growing settlement, joined them on the platform. This is what we hoped for, recognition that there is a better way to explore dangerous worlds. The Council fleet landed in the designated area that the Titan verms had helped prepare. Ships from species that rarely spoke to each other were parking side by side, their crews working together under human guidance. Ambassador Velthari was among the first to disembark, accompanied by delegates Teho had never seen before. There were the insectoid, Zephyrians, the crystalline resonance, and even representatives of the mysterious deep swimmers who rarely left their ocean worlds. Welcome to New Harmony, Young-soo greeted them using the name the community had chosen for. Itself remarkable, said Delegate Crystal of the Resonance, their crystal body ringing with musical tones. Our sensors detect no defensive installations, yet this is clearly the most secure settlement in the sector. As if to demonstrate the point, a group of Voidstalkers materialized near the landing area. But instead of attacking, they began guiding the visitors toward the main settlement, their invisible forms occasionally becoming visible to show the way. The creatures serve as both protectors and guides, explained Park Tae-young, another of the new trainees. They understand that visitors might be nervous, so they help them feel welcome. The tours of New Harmony amazed the council delegates. In the research center that Dr. Choi had expanded, scientists from multiple species worked together on projects that would have been impossible alone. Vorthok engineers learned from stone serpent tunnel designs while human biologists shared data with Keth healers. How do you maintain order with so many different species? Asked Commander Velanoth of the Deep Swimmers. Our projections suggested that conflicts would be inevitable. Sora, who had become the settlement's specialist in Voidstalker relations, smiled as several invisible cats brushed against the visitors. Conflicts happen sometimes, but when everyone can feel each other's emotions through the neural links, it is hard to stay angry for long. The council delegates were most impressed by the training center where new human-beast speakers learned. Their skills? Leah Rim and Park Tae-young were among 24 humans who had shown natural ability for creature communication. The neural patterns are consistent across all subjects, Dr. Lim explained as he showed them the training data. Humans appear to have a genetic predisposition for cross-species empathy that we never recognized before. Because you never had the opportunity, added the Keth elder, whose name was Weaver of Memories. Your species evolved on a world with limited biodiversity. Here, surrounded by so many forms of consciousness, your hidden talents emerged. Ambassador Valtheri's skin cycled through colors that indicated deep thought. The implications are staggering. If humans can establish these connections on other worlds, they can, confirmed Captain Hyansu, who had been promoted to oversee all human military operations in the sector. We have already received requests from 17 different systems asking for human assistance with hostile wildlife. The formal ceremony took place that evening in the great amphitheater that the Titan worms had carved from the hillside. Representatives of every species in New Harmony gathered as Ambassador Valthari read the official council declaration. By unanimous agreement of the Galactic Council, humanity is hereby granted the classification of interspecies mediators, Valthari announced. This new category recognizes your unique ability to facilitate communication and cooperation between different forms of consciousness. The declaration established the Interspecies Cooperation Protocol. With humans serving as mediators for first contact situations and dangerous world exploration, Young-Soo signed the documents that would make New Harmony the official training center for beast speakers. We accept this responsibility, Young-Soo said formally, but we want to make one thing clear. We are not trying to control these creatures. We are learning to be their friends. Mountain expressed approval by creating a gentle rumble that all the other Titan verms echoed. The sound rolled across the landscape like peaceful thunder, and every creature in the settlement seemed to respond with their own calls of agreement. War leader Kent, who had returned with a small Vorthok delegation, approached Taeho after the ceremony. I owe you an apology, he said. I thought you were trying to weaponize these creatures. I was wrong. You were afraid, Taeho replied. Fear makes us all do things we regret later, but fear can also be overcome. Indeed, the Vorthok Consortium would like to request human mediators for 3 worlds in our territory, where dangerous fauna has prevented colonization. Similar requests came from other delegates throughout the evening. The residents wanted help with the energy creatures of their gas giant worlds. The deep swimmers needed assistance with the massive predators that guarded certain ocean planets. Dr. Choi approached with a datapad full of communication requests. Earth Command reports that over 40 systems have formally requested beast speaker assistance. We are going to need a much larger training program. We will expand, Young-Soo promised. But slowly and carefully, this gift humanity has discovered comes with great responsibility. As the celebration continued into the night, Taeho found himself sitting quietly with Onyx in their favorite spot overlooking the settlement. The shadow maw had grown larger over the months, its crystal spines now reaching Taeho's shoulder. Through their bond, he could feel Onyx's contentment. The creature that had once been feared as a terrible predator was now surrounded by friends from dozens of species. Do you think we are doing the right thing? Taeho asked. Onyx's response was not in words, but in emotions. Pride, joy, and deep satisfaction at seeing former enemies living together in peace. Young children played in the settlement below, human kids laughing with young Keth, while forest dancers chased floating jellies in a game that transcended species. Barriers. Voidstalker cubs wrestled with baby ravens under the watchful eyes of their parents. A year later, New Harmony had become a pilgrimage site for researchers and diplomats from across the galaxy. The original mining operation had been replaced by the Interspecies Academy, where beast speakers from Earth trained alongside diplomats and scientists from other worlds. Taeho, now director of beast speaker training, often told new students about the first day when Onyx emerged from the ground and changed everything. The secret is not to think of them as aliens or monsters, he would say. Think of them as neighbors you have not met yet. Be curious instead of afraid. Offer friendship instead of demanding submission. Standing on Mountain's back as the sun set over Kepler-4 for 2b, Taeho watched transport ships arriving with new students and researchers. Humanity had found its place in the galaxy not as conquerors or warriors, but as the species that could build bridges between worlds. The beast speakers were carrying that gift to other systems now, establishing peaceful contact with creatures that had been considered too dangerous to approach. Each success opened new worlds for exploration and colonization. "You did this," old friend Teho said to Mountain, patting the ancient creature's armored hide. "You taught us that the biggest and strongest does not have to be the most feared. Sometimes it can be the most gentle." Mountain's response rumbled. Through the ground, a sound of deep contentment that spread to every creature in New Harmony. In that moment, Teho felt what all the beast speakers learned to recognize: the universe was full of friends, waiting to be discovered by those brave enough to extend a hand in peace, as the stars came out over Kepler-4 for 2b. Children of a dozen species fell asleep to the protective sounds of creatures that had once been the stuff of nightmares. And in the morning, they would wake up in a galaxy where fear was giving way to friendship, one world at a time.